You're listening to Change Your POV Podcast, episode 182. Change Your POV Podcast Network is dedicated to helping veterans become just as successful out of uniform as we were when we were in. In order to become successful, you will need help. For some, it's a lot of help. For others, well, it's just a little. But one thing remains constant. We all need help. This week, I sit down with Travis Long, a mentee of Veterati, and his three wise men, Veterati mentors Chris McGraw, Shawn Hoadley, and Tim Denman. In this first-of-its-kind interview, we will hear firsthand the impact these mentors and this incredible platform had on one of its mentees. This mentee-mentor relationship is unique to every individual and in every relationship. This behind-the-scenes look will help shed some light on the power of mentorship. We all hope you enjoy this show, and more than anything, we hope you will give Veterati a shot, either as a mentee or a mentor, or like me, you will decide to become both. Travis Long, the mentee in this interview, was 17 when he enlisted in the United States Navy. Serving in the Navy instilled a great deal of patriotism and professional pride that remains a firm foundation of who he is today. With a bachelor's degree in marketing and a sales background, Travis successfully landed his dream career with United Rentals with the help of Veterati and the amazing mentors this platform provides. Introducing his three wise men, we first have Chris McGraw. Chris is the manager of physicians recruiting at Next Columns, the physician placement division of Health Carousel. Here he leads a team of recruiters serving physicians and physician assistants by providing interim assignments and permanent placement services across the United States. Previously a manager of executive placement for Gem City Business Solutions that provided professional recruiting and placement services within the Southwest Ohio region. Chris has served C-level clients for over 20 years by delivering quality talent management expertise in the areas of sales and marketing, supply chain, finance, and technology. And just for the listeners of Change Your POV Podcast Network, Chris offered this free PDF document download titled Target plus Company plus Job plus Search Guide. You can read the rest of his bio and download this free gift by heading over to the show notes page for this episode at changeyourpov.com/episode 182. Next of these three wise men is Shawn Hoadley. Shawn has enjoyed helping people his entire life. He especially enjoys helping clients and customers. By teaching, encouraging, and empowering others, Shawn creates special relationships that have led to success for all involved. For the past 5 years, Shawn has been pursuing a new path in search of professional fulfillment. He started by fundraising and teaching guitar to veterans at Hines VA Hospital in Chicago with Guitars for Vets, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Shawn's rich work history provides a platform from which he is able to communicate successfully with business leaders in any industry at every level. And the final wise man, Tim Denman. Tim helps companies craft solutions to complex business problems, typically through the use of data analytics and technology. He firmly believes that organizations succeed when they foster a culture of authenticity and transparency. With 15 plus years in sales and business development, project management, and leadership experience, he holds an MBA. He was a West Point instructor, former military officer, Air Force, engineer, and public speaker. Business-to-business, consultative enterprise sales leader, and trusted advisor to Fortune 1000 C-level executives across multiple industry verticals, including technology, materials, and higher education. I hope you enjoy this unique episode. Let's jump right in to this great discussion. Hello, folks. This is Eddie Lazary, host of Change Your POV Podcast Network, and I have got a special show for everybody tonight. This is something a little bit different that we don't really haven't done in the past, and that is I've got 4 guests on tonight, and so I kicked Bennett off the show tonight, who is normally our co-host that comes on, but I said, Bennett, I think I just need to do this one by myself, because having 5 people on is going to be enough to try to wrangle, so he agreed. So he is bowed out of this, but he is very anxious to hear the result of this interview. And this is a special interview. As many listeners of the show know, I have recently begun my journey as a mentor on an incredible platform called Veterati. And the CEO of the company, I've been in contact with her, and she reached out to me. She said, I really dig what you guys are doing on the show. Love the episodes that you've released so far talking about our take on Veterati. And I was like, well, you know what? I said, what would be really interesting to do would be to bring on some mentees and mentors and allow them to share their stories and get their take on things. And she goes, oh, I think that's a great idea. I'll take you up on your offer. Let me make the introduction. And about 10 minutes later, she's introduced me to Travis Long, who is the mentee and what she dubs his three wise men, which are Chris McGraw, Shawn Hoadley, and Tim Denman. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on the show.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, like I said, I don't have any pre-canned questions to ask. We're just going to kind of go through this, and I'll start it off with Travis, because Travis is kind of the hub on the wheel, so to speak, and the mentors are the spokes. So, Travis, I'll start off by asking how long have you been on the Veterati platform?
So I've been on Veterati probably since I want to say probably early November, late October of last year, approximately somewhere in there, I would say. Okay,
so less than a year. And have you started? I mean, have you attempted to use any other mentoring type platforms, or were you seeking help like on LinkedIn or any other social media platforms?
Yes. In fact, I was trying to wrangle my mute button for a second, but yes. Yes, so prior to that, I mean, I understood what the idea of mentorship was, but to me, it was something that really you only really pursued if you were trying to, win the high school karate tournament or, save a galaxy far, far away, but as far as it actually pertaining to, job searching and all that stuff and answering a lot of questions that I had, I never really looked at it from that perspective. I mean, I reached out to a couple of people on LinkedIn in very, very primitive ways, and, I'd shoot some applications out and sit there and wonder, man, why don't they want to talk to me, man? I can't believe this, and really kind of spun my wheels a little bit. And, but I will say, I've kind of, as I told Diana, it really made my whole approach, it went from very one-dimensional to very dynamic and adaptive, and what I think would be common sense now, but at the time, I mean, it was like a revolutionary idea, so
yeah, and you're a veteran, and as a veteran myself, one of the things that I struggled with when I got out, and what I often run into with veterans that I mentor, is this idea of this really kind of there's more than a couple positions, but a couple of the positions are one of, a lot of veterans find it difficult to leave their ego at the door and ask for help, right? A lot of that may come from their military experience or particular jobs that they may have held. That really becomes very evident in a lot of the senior leadership that I talk to, the senior NCOs and senior officers. Some of them they just come right out and say, wow, this is a bit off more than I could chew, this whole thing called civilian world, and I know that I need help, and they seek it. Other people are like, I've managed millions of dollars, hundreds of people. I've got this. I'm going to do it. And they often find that they succumb to the challenges that they face once they separate the military. And then the other side of the spectrum I see is people, they're okay with asking for help and getting help, but they live in this world of they don't know what they don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Right, absolutely.
And so on that spectrum, where do you think you fell?
It was a bit of the ego thing, really. And I think that's from other guys I've talked to that, I served with during my time in the Navy, and I've talked to them, I'm like, okay, well, how's, or even guys that, I went to college with, we had like a collegiate veterans association in my school. And a lot of those guys, they're in similar situations I was in a couple of months ago. And, and I just know these guys have a lot more to contribute to society than what they're doing, and I talk to them and be like, well, I've been doing this, and, I've learned these lessons and this. And, I think for a lot of those guys, it's just, they have that kind of mental thing like, well, I don't really need that kind of help, or, I'm not, training to fight some kid in a karate tournament, that kind of thing. So that's kind of what I think it goes back to. I think you were pretty spot on that analysis there.
Yeah, and I don't know if the mentors on the call realize this, but between the three of you gentlemen, you guys have clocked in 106 mentor hours on the Veterati platform. And I'm sure, like myself, I'm new to Veterati. I've only been on for a couple of months, but I've been serving in the capacity of a mentor for veterans for a long time, even before I found Veterati. And I'm sure that is the same for you guys as well. So you guys have many, many hours of mentorship clocked amongst you. And so the what's interesting when you start mentoring that many people or have that many hours clocked, you start to see common threads or common themes kind of float to the surface. So we'll start with you, Shawn. What's some of the things that you've kind of noticed as a mentor when you're talking with? Now, again, Shawn, correct me if I'm wrong. I think you're the only mentor of the three that is not a veteran, but you are a veteran advocate. Is that true?
That is correct, and thank you for pointing that out so I didn't have to awkwardly stumble over that. So my engagement with the military community started when I was a little kid. My father and brother both served as machinist mates in the Navy. Elderly family members tell me stories about World War II, and I was surrounded by folks from Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and Coast Guard in all the neighborhoods I grew up. Here on the south side of Chicago and also in Northwest Indiana. Currently teach guitar down at the Heinz VA in Chicago with an organization called Guitars for Vets as a way to kind of help these women and men heal from PTSD and traumatic brain injury. So that's a short background of how I'm engaged on the veteran front.
And that's credible. And here's the thing, the one piece of advice that I give to veterans, particularly those that are recently separated from the military, even those that haven't quite separated yet and are looking at seeking mentorship on the outside, many folks that I talk to, they want a veteran mentor, somebody that gets them, right? They understand where they've come from. They get them. But one of the things that I found incredibly valuable for me was, yes, I had my veteran mentors that I could kind of turn to, the people, my sounding boards, right? The people that can keep me on even keel and call me on my crap when I needed it to. But I stumbled into this non-veteran mentorship. It was my first corporate job. There was a guy, and he also refers to himself as a very avid veteran advocate, right? And he loves he loves veterans, he loves the military, he's got an affinity for everything that we do. He himself couldn't serve, and he just does everything he can to give back to the veteran community. And I started in an entry-level position in corporate, and he kind of pulled me aside, and he says, I'm going to offer up anything that you need from me. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, anything you need from me to help with your transition, I'm willing to provide it. And at first I was like, well, thanks, man, but you're not a veteran. I don't know if you really fully understand where I'm coming from. And he goes, no, but that's it. I think maybe my value is in that I don't know where you're coming from, so I can kind of help you see those things, see it from a different angle. And I was like, huh. And I thought that was amazing, and I never really thought of it that way. And one of the things I first struggled with getting out was my use of military jargon, and I didn't even realize I was using it. And so one of the agreements that I had with this guy, his name was Dave, I said, Dave, could you do me a favor and just carry around a notebook with you, just a little pocket notebook, and anytime, whether I'm in a meeting or on a call or whatever, I sat next to him, and you hear me say something that you don't quite understand, could you just jot that down? And at the end of every day, the last 10 minutes of the day, we'll sit down and do a little huddle, and you kind of just point those things out to me so it makes me aware of them. He goes, yeah, man, sure, no problem, I can do that. And so he started to do that. And after a couple of days, I realized the power in just that alone did for me in terms of my own self-actualization, my self-awareness in my converting military jargon into civilian terminology so that other people could understand what I'm saying. So I commend you highly, Shawn, for offering your time and your services on a veteran-centric platform like Veterati, because it's guys like you that really help veterans like me see the softer side of Sears, as it were, right?
It's my pleasure, and I want to personally thank every one of you for what you've done for this country. And it's something that drives my passion, to see all of the women and men that are separating from the military with such great minds, hearts of a lion, and this passion that just doesn't have a direction. I get great satisfaction from weeding through all that BS and breaking it down, like I think I did with Travis, to, hey, let's start with a sheet. Pros and cons of what you're doing now, and kind of a dream sheet. Where do you want to live? What do you want to do? What do you see yourself doing? And just kind of clearing through all the clouds. Just because I don't know Travis from Adam on our first call. I don't have any of those hurdles in the way. I'm not concerned with, does my MOS fit with this job at Target Corporation or whatnot? I can see very black and white, especially with my skills as a recruiter now. Does your skill set, match up with this job you're going after, or the 3 jobs that you provided me? So I just like you said with your friend Dave, I think it's a great value add to match up a veteran with a veteran. Not only that, but veteran with a non-veteran, in order to keep that path clear and just give kind of black and white facts back. And I think that's where Travis and I started out.
Yeah, that's very cool. So Travis, was Shawn one of your first, or perhaps maybe even only non-veteran mentor that you've had?
He was not the first in really any of those categories, but kind of as I progressed through Veterati, I had the first couple ones, and then it just the way that the dust settled, I kind of had, 3 guys I kept going back to. That's just the way things kind of panned out. And I was like, well, this guy, he really, has a lot of knowledge that I need, and, we can gel well together and, kick around some ideas. And that's really, and the way it ended up panning out is that one of them was an officer, one was an NCO, and one was a civilian, but all patriots nonetheless. But still, that was really, exactly like you said, it's immensely valuable to be able to talk to somebody like Shawn, that doesn't have, that thorough of an understanding of military stuff and all that, because the guys I was interviewing with and talking to, those guys didn't know what it was. So, if we can kick around ideas and get talking points and all that to hit the, the important stuff and just hit the key points and not just lose people in the weeds of irrelevant stuff that doesn't really add value. It's cool and it's a good story to tell later, but does it really, help you with this job you're going after or this position or whatever else? So.
Right, absolutely. And we'll transition over to Chris. Chris is, of the mentors, the most seasoned in terms of hours clocked on Veterati. You've been a busy guy, Chris. One of the things that I picked up on when I was reading a little bit through your profile is you talk about offering career branding and interviewing advice to senior NCOs and officers. And I find that very intriguing to me, that you gear a lot of your advice and services towards more of the senior military leadership. Not saying that you turn away the junior guys, but there's a different element or a different need that comes up when you're talking to the senior folks coming out of the military, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. Matter of fact, when I came out of the Army, I was an E5, went into college. So my transition, a lot different than the senior NCOs or officers coming out, where they're ready to make that translation of past experience into the next opportunity. So this is really a common thread of what I do here, kind of full-time in my civilian job, is in executive recruiting and placement. In the past, I've worked with civilian executives. Maybe they've been downsized. Maybe they're just looking for a change in their career, and they've got to almost reinvent themselves. So we kind of build that package of how do we rebrand their career and kind of their professional capital, so that there's a lot of cachet and it gets attention of hiring organizations, or actually we try and backdoor a lot of opportunities where there isn't necessarily a job posted, but we present them in such a way that it develops an opportunity for a conversation with people within that organization to see if there's an opportunity for a career path there. But yeah, definitely different dynamics with the senior NCOs, the E8s and E9s. And I really learned a lot of that where I live here in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've done some past volunteer work in both the Transition Assistance Program, but then also ETAP, the Executive Transition Assistance Program for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base near Dayton, Ohio. That's where I really was able to see the need for that senior NCO and officer transition. But yeah, definitely different dynamics.
Now, do you see guys, I say guys generically, guys, gals, do you see service members seeking your services prior to getting out, or do you see primarily those that like, oh, I got this, and then they get out and they're like, oh man, I really need help, and then they start seeking help?
Yeah, that's a great question because it's really across the board. I've had opportunity to talk with some transitioning military personnel who haven't even started terminal leave yet, but they had the foresight to really plan ahead to figure out what they want to do next. And that's typically where the senior NCOs and officers are kind of in that mindset. But I have spoken to some where they thought they were going to land in a career area, but they either realized they didn't like it, there wasn't a fit, or they just weren't getting traction. And they've already made that transition into the civilian world. So it's really been kind of a mix.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things I really like about what you just said, Chris, is you got out of the Army as an E5, but yet now you find yourself in a position where you're coaching and mentoring, senior leadership, senior NCOs, senior officers. And I bring that up because a lot of people in my network, a lot of the veteran friends that I keep, and having a podcast, I have an opportunity to meet a lot of people. And there's people that I mention, I'm like, man, you have a lot to offer the veteran community. You should really consider being a mentor on this great platform, Veterati. And a lot of them say, I don't have the, I got out as an E5 or an E6, or I got out as, first lieutenant or captain, and I don't know if I got enough experience, or, I don't have the master's degree or the PhD. And I'm like, you're missing the point here. It's not the value, it's not the knowledge and experience necessarily that you had when you were in the military. It's the experience that you've had since you've been in the military, living through this, your experiences in the corporate world, or in a startup or in a nonprofit or your own business. Those are the transitional experiences that these folks coming out of the military are in need of, and they're searching for, regardless of the rank that they have on their collar.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I've found other mentors who, again, maybe even came out as an E4 or E6, or totally different MOSs. Like for myself, I was a light weapons infantry squad leader. So unless I wanted to be in security or a police officer, I had no translation to the civilian world. But it's that post experience that you kind of garner that is the most value. Yeah, I totally agree with that.
And with all of your time as a mentor, what's some of the things, and they perhaps might even be some of the things that you see there, that you saw with Travis in your time with him, but what are some of the things that kind of surface to the top when you're talking to these folks in terms of common denominators across the board?
I would say once they can get an interview, it's that post-interview engagement where and this comes a lot from my experience in executive recruiting and placement, where I would coach my candidates on, try to control the process as much as possible. Now, what I mean by that is we don't manipulate the people that are interviewing you, but you want to control the process to where you want to make sure you present yourself in a certain light, and that every answer that you give directs those listening to you back in that direction of that light. And then once that interview is over, ask certain questions before it is all completed to get a gauge of where you stand relative to possibly other candidates. That's really the common denominator that I think we talked a lot of tactical things, both pre-interview and post-interview with Travis, that I think is that common thread.
Absolutely.
So yeah, Travis, chime in here. What are some of the things that you learned, or let's back up. What are some of the things maybe you went into these mentorships with the predisposition or a preconception or notion of something being one way, and then how did that change through your mentorship with these guys?
Well, really, I mean, so to answer the question of what I learned, well, shoot, it'd take hours. I mean,
right, yeah,
it'd take a while, but no, I mean, kind of initially going into it, I had the conception that I believe that a lot of other guys have. I mean, towards the last couple semesters of college, I sat through the college career workshops and stuff, and a lot of those things you felt kind of like they were sitting there talking about, okay, it's very important to show up to work on time. It's very important to make sure that you dress appropriately for your job. I'm sitting there like, well, I can't believe I'm sitting there wasting time listening to this. And so there was that degree of help from the university level. And then I kind of produced my resume. I had a couple of people that, professors and academics and those kind of people look at it, review it. They're like, yeah, it looks good to me, and I was real proud of it. I had a bunch of military stuff on there, a bunch of cool words and acronyms. I was like, man, this is, legit. And I had my college degree on there, and I was sitting there, I was like, there's no way anybody would not want to, hire me, and I did I had an internship. I sold alarm systems door to door. I was like, man, this is impressive. So, I thought I was like, the best thing since sliced bread. And so, whenever it was time to start looking for civilian employment, I shot some applications out, and I had like one resume, and I would send it to the career site, or as a lot of candidates refer to it as like a black hole, just where you send applications to go die pretty much. And 2 weeks later, I get that nice little email, thank you for applying, we're considering other candidates. And that probably happened, I kid you not, probably between 50 and 60 times. And I was sitting there thinking, well, dang, I mean, I wonder if it's because is it the economy, is it this? And it's none of those things. It's because I wasn't engaging the company correctly. I didn't show them that I was the candidate to do the job. It's like whenever I was born and I was at, my first grade career day, I would explain, this is the career I want to do right then at that point. But that's really, and I think a lot of guys have that same conception too. And at that point I was like, well, I was substitute teaching, and I was like, well, I need a job. And I just found a job, and I just kind of did that for a while, and I was I believe pretty underemployed, and I believe that's the same rut that a lot of other guys fall in. I mean, there's a lot of guys I went to school with that graduated with excellent GPAs. They had great military careers, and they're doing just jobs. I mean, they could be adding a lot more value to the American economy than they're adding, but they can't seem to find that break. And because I think they have a lot of the same conceptions I did, and they don't really know how to engage the companies and the people who actually make the decisions and so forth, and they end up kind of just working something that's quite frankly beneath them to do.
Yeah. And Tim, I haven't forgot about you, my friend, but we do save officers for last on this show. I'm just kidding. So in your bio, it talks about helping transitioning veterans match their passion to their careers. And that, I mean, let me just read that again. Helping transitioning veterans match their passion to their careers. And I absolutely love that. There's only one problem that I find with guys getting out in the military, and that is my passion was what I was doing in the military. And oh, by the way, what I was doing in the military, there's just not a job in the outside world for that. Like for me personally, I was a forward observer, right? My job was to find the enemy and engage them with indirect fire in any means possible. And we talk about Chris as a weapons team chief, squad leader. These guys know that they get out, they're just not an equivalent job, but they're passionate. But they're just not. They're looking for ways to be passionate in a career. They just don't know what career to choose. And oftentimes many of them just default to the typical law enforcement, corrections officer, nuclear industry, border patrol. And, some people find, happy careers in those positions. Other people are like, man, this just totally isn't really what I want to be doing. So how do you help transitioning veterans really find a career to match something that they could be passionate about?
Yeah, I mean, so I think in your context, a forward observer, you have to distill. There are certain elements of that role that are transferable into other roles in the private sector. I mean, one of them might be something in the business intelligence space, or perhaps business development or sales. There's a lot of correlation there. The question is, doing that, I don't know, the introspective work to really figure out what makes you tick, or, think of some of your best days in uniform and what were the specific activities that you were doing, and then break down within that activity, which skills could you actually utilize in the private sector and not fall victim to stereotypes. Like, I was an engineer officer, so stereotypically I should be a project manager and engineer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's kind of lazy thinking, because what I really love doing is solving problems, and sales, business development is solving problems. And so, I had a conversation with someone today, and they said, why are you in sales if you have a civil engineering degree? I'm like, what do you mean? Why would I not be in sales? I'm good at solving problems. I know from my experience, and I talk to a good amount of people that are getting out, they're always chasing the money. So they're worried about what that comp level is for that first role out of a uniform, as if you make less than what you made, all in comp between BAH and base pay, if you make slightly less, as if you're taking this monster step back. But the reality is, if you chase the money in lieu of the passion, you're actually going to end up making less money over time than if you pursue the job based on your passion. The money's going to come. It's just sometimes it's very difficult in the short term to understand the long term. I think probably 90% of people I deal with suffer, from that, that syndrome.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And one of the things that I've found is a lot of folks getting out of the military that are coming out of a leadership role, whether it be an NCO or an officer position where they have direct reports, they're signing fit reports or NCORs, OERs, whatever you call them in your branch of service. And then they get a job, and it might even be equal in pay, like you're saying. I mean, it's obviously that's a false expectation to be able to move laterally across out of uniform into civilian job, making equal or more than your total comp. But a lot of people, compensation aside, a lot of people move into a role, out of a leadership role, into an individual contributor role, and they see that as a demotion.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do think most people view it as a demotion, and I don't know, you have to be objective about life, right? You might have been perhaps a subject matter expert in uniform, but the second you transition out, even if you're a logistician in uniform, maybe you go into the logistics or transportation space for, a private sector company, it's still different. So I think you got to kind of get real with yourself and say, look, if management is the track, there are certain management roles you can get into, but it might not be at the comp range because it might be in a slightly different industry. I don't know. I always tell people, you got to look. Clayton Christensen, the Harvard professor, he's known for that whole. He's got a lot of books out there, but one of them about disruptive industries, and one of his most recent articles, I actually think became a book, was the notion of what job are you hiring your current job to do for you down the road. So if you were, let's say an NCO or an officer, and you were commanding 25 people, and you transition out, and now you're an individual contributor, but if that role 2 years on could set you up to maybe supervise 20, 25, 30, or maybe only 5 or 6 people, but it puts you on a track, isn't that worth it? Isn't that short-term, quote-unquote, sacrifice worth the long-term gain? And I don't know if people model that out. When Travis had a couple of offers to consider, we did a little bit of modeling, right? Your existing position versus the 2 offers. And there's a lot of variables, right? There's a lot of considerations, and then there's different weighted factors for all. I think when you're transitioning out, you need to look at that and figure out what matters most to you, and what do you really want to be doing. And independent of what your family expects of you, or what maybe your spouse does, or you really got to figure out what you want to do. And that sounds so basic, but most people don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That you bring up a good point there, because I'm a perfect example of that, and a lot of folks that I speak with are the same. They get out of the military and they have an idea of what they think they want to do, because let's face it, I don't know about you gentlemen, but I joined the Army right out of high school, 19 years old, never been out on my own. I joined the Army. Now I'm off, serving Uncle Sam for 10 years, active duty. And then I get out of the military, and really at the age of 30, 1 or 2 now, wife and 2 kids, family that I've got to support. It is really the first time I've now been technically on my own, trying to pursue a career in something that I want to do. And I'm like, I don't even know what I want to do. And so I just kind of fall into whatever comes my way. And it eventually, and I end up moving from kind of one job to another, one industry to another, just kind of, getting my feet wet and just expanding my wings a little bit, and really starting to understand the civilian world and understand what it is that I do like to do. And a lot of veterans see themselves going through that same kind of that career trajectory, where it isn't really a trajectory at all. It's more of a boomerang. They're kind of bouncing from here to there and the other thing. And they're concerned. They're like, man, I want to continue to try different things until I can really figure out what I want to do. Because if I'm going to spend the rest of my career trying to pursue something, I want to make sure it's what I really want to be doing. But in order to do that, obviously, sometimes you got to kind of move and bounce and try different things. And some things you kind of fall into that niche, and others you don't. But a lot of people say, I don't want to do that too much because it'll negatively impact my consideration for future jobs, because of the different jobs or the multiple jobs that I've had on my resume. And I'll bring this one back over to Chris. In your experience, obviously, as a recruiter, that's something you look at is, the career trajectory and the career path of an individual. But you're looking at, job tenure, and there's a lot of different factors when recruiting. But what do you think when you review a veteran's resume and they've bounced from job to job, not every year, but every 5-6 years, a new position, and crossing industries? What's your take on that?
Sure. If it's a case of looking at career trajectory where they maybe move around every 5 or 6 years, I have no problem with that. And if they're a fit for what my client's looking for, I have no problem with making that presentation to the client. Reason why is when I got out of the Army, 92, the org charts in typical corporate America were light years different than they are now. Mm-hmm. Things are so much flatter now that if an individual wants to promote and gain more responsibility, kind of what Tim was alluding to before in terms of, building your career, advancing, gaining more responsibilities and maybe people underneath you, you may not find that in the organization you're currently with, like you used to be able to find, say, in 1990. Mm-hmm. You may have to move outside the organization to find that next opportunity. So because of that, if you have a good reason for that transition, that's all you need. I really don't have I don't think that is a negative on a resume at all. Also, it can be a great selling point if you demonstrate that you moved from one type of culture to another. It shows that you're able to quickly adapt, which we know people in the military can do that. So I think that's a positive. That's not a negative, especially when it shows ladders of promotability, regardless if it's actually moving up the ladder, so to speak, in terms of title, or if it's just gaining more responsibility or more influence.
Right. That's a great answer. And Shawn, this one is for you. There's a lot of companies out, and you hear it everywhere, right? Hire a veteran. Veterans make great employees. There's just this huge, PR push, for the lack of a better term, and it's across the board. It's across in pretty much every country, every company these days. It's the keeping up with Joneses. Everybody. I mean, basically, if you're not a pro hiring veteran organization, you're kind of you're not keeping up with the times, right? Especially with as many veterans that are out there today. But one of the things that I hear often is, hire veterans, veterans this, veterans that. And a lot of the things that I do is I also speak to other companies and organizations about that very thing, about hiring veterans. Because a lot of things is, a part of our job is to educate veterans about how to be successful in the corporate world. But at the same time, we got to educate corporate about being successful with veterans, right? And one of the things that I changed my mantra. It used to be I was a very pro hire veteran kind of a person, but now I tell companies, don't hire veterans for the sake of them being a veteran. Hire the best person for the job. That person may be a veteran and may not be a veteran. But I think if companies move into this position of just hiring veterans for the sake of them being veterans, one, the companies might end up hiring a veteran that they shouldn't have, and they're going to get a bad taste in their mouth. That veteran's probably not going to have a very good experience with that company. And now you've built this rift, this incompatible relationship between veteran and corporate that can turn sour for a lot of people, both inside and outside the company. So I've changed my position on that, and my position now is hire the right person for the job. They may or may not be a veteran, but that puts the onus on the veteran to make sure that they are the best candidate for the job, not just because that they carry a veteran status. What is your take on that, Shawn?
On a personal level, yeah, I couldn't I couldn't agree with you more. If I put my Mondelez hat on, we're a government contractor. The veteran category is put under the D&I, diversity and inclusion. There are X amount of percentages where you've got to achieve these goals that are mandated. But I as a recruiter myself, I won't present the wrong person, just out of natural, just doing the job. But I could not agree with you more that you really have to find the right person for the right job in the first place. Otherwise, no matter whatever category you're from, quote unquote, you'll be doing that candidate a disservice, especially a veteran who's sort of trying to discover their identity in the corporate world, a recently separated veteran, that is. If I have a bad experience with your company because you put me in this job just because I was a veteran, you set me up to fail, that's not going to work out well for anyone. And that's a step back rather than a step forward. So I would agree with you. Hire the right person for the job. And, before you know it, you'll look back at your last 10 hires and 4 or 5 of them are going to be veterans. Because of the, like perfect example, old Travis here on the phone is like a bulldog. He never stopped. He was constant. He and I had several hours on the phone on Veterati, but there were times when it was just like, look, man, we just got to talk. So we just talk. So we've logged hours, off of Veterati, but he was tenacious, but not just tenacious like, hey, help me. He was prepared. He added value to the conversation. He had substantive questions. So like you said, yeah, it will, hire the right person for the job, and that will definitely spark the rest of the candidate pool, veteran or not, to get themselves squared away and have their stuff ready so that they're one of the top candidates rather than in the black hole that Travis was talking about going down.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm going to put Travis on the spot here. Like I said, none of this was prepared, so get ready, Travis. I'm going to ask you to share one piece of an aha moment or an epiphany or a takeaway from each of these 3 mentors. I'm sure through the time that you spent with each of them, it's been multiple, so I'm going to put you on the spot in many ways. One, because you're going to say it basically in front of them, but 2, you're just going to have to pick one thing from each of these guys that you find extreme value in and you were able to take away in your life and be able to implement into your career. So we'll start with Chris.
All right, gee whiz, that's a tough one. So I will say this. So anytime, for all my Veterati calls, I had this yellow notepad, and I just write down notes here and there, ideas, questions, do this, do that. And, it's packed away somewhere. I just finished moving to Orlando a couple days, actually yesterday, but, and it's I was kind of thumbing through that thing whenever I was packing all my stuff to leave for Nashville. And, man, there's a lot of stuff in there. But so to pin it down to one thing, that's going to be the tough thing. So, starting with Chris, probably one of the best things about speaking with Chris, I mean, really all three of the gentlemen here, is that, you could really get some really sound analysis, for a situation you were going through, or strategies too. Probably the number one thing I picked up from Chris, though, was we almost had almost like a flow chart, like of a rules of engagement kind of thing for reaching out to a company I was interested in. It was like, if they did this, do this. If they didn't do that, do this. And so I was able to effectively, keep those folks engaged that I wanted to target without, coming off as, if you browse LinkedIn, you'll see recruiters every now and then putting some guy on blast talking about, oh man, I can't believe this guy, sent me this message and demanded a job and wanted me to find a job for him based on his skill set, and all that. But really, I'd say that Chris really taught me how to effectively communicate and keep the people that I wanted to talk to engaged. Not necessarily just recruiters, because a lot of times, if you talk to potential peers, management, anybody in that position's chain of command, you can usually get a lot further with those guys than a recruiter, because recruiters most of the times have their guard up anyway, because they're like, well, this guy wouldn't be talking to me if he didn't want a job. Mm-hmm. So that's probably the biggest takeaway from Chris there.
Nice. Very cool. And we'll move over to Tim.
All right. So as far as Tim goes, that's a tough one. So my initial impression, was speaking with Tim for the first time, I was like, man, this guy's a jerk. Well, no, I'm just kidding. But anyway, no, I was just, so Tim, he would have cause I'd always try to, whenever I finished a call, I'd try to have something actionable that I could do. And Tim was really good about picking things out, little objectives here and there. Okay, well, send me a copy of this, do this, and then send that to me. And by doing that, he made sure that I kept myself moving. I kept the momentum going, even whenever I'd have some tough breaks here and there, driving 800 miles for an interview and not getting anything out of it except for a ton of experience, that's a whole nother story. But no, I would say really just getting really actionable points out of there, which that's really, you could really, tell that, Tim came from the background of a commissioned officer, being able to come up with points like that ultimately achieve the desired goal, which was me landing, quote unquote, my dream career here, which I start Monday. So I'd probably say that's Tim's biggest takeaway there.
That's awesome. And now Shawn.
So Shawn, that's a tough one, because Shawn was kind of, I'm just trying to think what I'd say. So again, with all these guys, there's tons of stuff. With Shawn, it'd really be a lot of our conversations would almost be like quasi interviews almost, because he would ask this question and then I would answer it, and then he'd be like, well, this is what I would do. So really, I would say one of the biggest takeaways from speaking with Shawn is that, and I will say that all three of the guys helped me out with interviews and stuff, but just going back and forth with each other and stuff, we were able to bounce ideas off of each other, and if they say this, or then do this. If they say this, they're really thinking that. So really, going into the whole Veterati experience, I was thinking that the job search was really more like checkers, but it's really much more like chess than checkers, because it's not just, you jump a piece, all right, king me, done. It's much more complex than that, I've learned. And if you can effectively, manage all those aspects of it, you'll yield a lot better results. I mean, heck, I went from getting probably 0 interviews to within about 2.5, 3 months, I probably get a phone interview every month, an in-person interview every month and a half, until I sped up to the point where I was having a phone interview with somebody at least every week and a half. I was having an in-person interview about every 2 weeks. And ultimately, it came to the point where I was having to decide between 2 very good job offers. And that was a situation I never would have saw coming, because if you would have, rewinded back a year ago, if you would have given me either one of those, I'd been like, well, done deal. When do I start? But, I guess the techniques were so effective that they yielded, 2 and both of them very, very good companies, both very good career paths. But we just had to sit down and really analyze, which one is the better fit for Travis based on, the culture of the company, the role of the actual role of the career, what I'd be doing there. And, like Tim was talking about, aligning your passion with it as well, because, he had a good point that, if you're truly passionate about something, the financial rewards will come later. So, but that's probably what I would say about that.
That's awesome. Very cool, gentlemen. We're fresh out of time. I am going to go round robin here and ask one question of each of you, and then we'll wrap it up and we'll call it a day. But I wanted to, before we got into that, I wanted to just say thank you all for making the time to come on the show today. You guys, like I said, we could have literally continued to talk for 80 hours and broke this up into so many different interviews, because there's so much wealth of information and knowledge between you guys here, and you guys are just a representative of four of many mentors and mentees on the Veterati platform. So that kind of leads into my question, and we'll start with you, Tim, and that is, of the listeners of the show, and obviously I've got it's more of a veteran kind of a demographic audience that I have. Some are starting to get exposure to Veterati through the previous episodes that I've done recently. Some of them have never even heard of it before. So just briefly describe for us and the listening audience, why Veterati? I mean, why would anyone, whether they're currently serving or veterans, why would anyone, should anyone consider going on Veterati? What would you say would be some takeaways that they could come to expect?
Yeah, a couple of things. I mean, first, no man is an island, right? You can't go things alone in this world. It's a very complicated world out there. The other one would be, the Jim Collins book, Built to Last, Good to Great. I believe every person, not just transitioning veteran, needs their own personal board of directors. There's a lot of life, career, finances, family stability, happiness, etc. It's very, very, very difficult when you navigate the waters from wearing a uniform to going out in the private sector to be able to speak with as many mentors as you can possibly speak to, who raise their hand and make themselves available to speak with you. That's massive, because a lot of times you reach out to people on LinkedIn, don't get back to you. It's in reverse. People are saying, please, I want to talk to you. I want to help you. And you can do what Travis did. Take 3 or 4 or 5 mentors and kind of triangulate your position and figure out which elements of each of those mentors are, you're going to heed that advice. I think ultimately that's what you need to do. I think every person needs to do it. I think the 200,000 plus veterans that are going to transition this year, doesn't matter what your rank is, I think everyone should be doing that. Veterati becomes the mechanism by which you do it. And it's just the easiest path. The fact that it's on demand, it's digital, it's super easy to sync up with LinkedIn. I think all those elements make it, there's zero downside risk.
Hell yeah, totally agree. What about you, Shawn? Same question.
I'd hate to get the same answer, but I mean, everyone has a teacher, everyone. No one's learned all this stuff themselves. That's me. That's you, Eddie. That's, Tim, Chris, Travis. First of all, Travis, after you get dug into your new digs, I expect you to be on here on Veterati and teach other people coming out what you've learned. I think it's really important to see a successful, recently transitioned veteran come out and show that I can do it, you can do it. I think it's such an important thing to give that demonstration, to show that it can be done. We'll kind of take away the fear of a newly separated veteran and let them know that, hey, I can go to this place. I don't have to be afraid of who I'm going to talk to. Nobody's going to yell at you and tell you your resume's stupid or something. This is all help. Like, every one of us wants to help. And I can tell that Travis is the type of person that wants to give back. And I hope, like Tim said, I hope all 250,000, however many per year that are separating, go directly to Veterati, or email Diane. Every one of you email Diane, or however you get in touch with it. hop on here, take advantage of this, do what Travis did. He didn't have one. He had how many did you contact, Travis? 50 of us, and then you landed. And then you landed on the three of us. However you landed on us going back. It's not everybody fits your style. It's like guitar teachers. If you go to one person that's really rigid, it may not work for you. If you go to someone else that says, "Hey, what kind of music do you like to play?" That's a different approach. So find the right people, find the people that really sing to you, if you will, and just don't give up. Like Travis did you have emergency appendix surgery or something?
Close gallbladder, which that was kind of comical.
Surgery. Okay, but you wouldn't know it. The kid never stopped. He didn't say, "Oh, hey, I can't call you because I have my gallbladder out," or I'm not going to be able to send you this, offer that I just got so you can read it because he never gave up. So I guess the three things I would point to is, get registered with Veterati, whether you're close or you've started your, transition already or not. 2, don't give up. Continue to talk with, someone until you find the right 1, 2, or 3 people that you want to deal with. And then once you're in the position, give back. Hop on Veterati and share what you've learned when you're in a position to do so. I think, like you said, Tim, this should be part of the TAP program, to be quite honest with you.
Yep, totally agree. And Chris, what is your takeaway?
Sure. Stanley Milgram, the popular social scientist, did that famous experiment about being 6 degrees separated from other people. And what everyone falsely assumed that we're all separated just by 6 degrees of other people. And that's not true. What he found was there are connectors in our society, special people that are 6 degrees separated from other people, the people you want to be in front of. Go to Veterati, register. That's where you're going to find those connectors. They're going to get you in touch with or show you how to connect with those people that you want to either be in front of for career or career advice. That's why I say to get on Veterati. Absolutely.
And that leaves it with you, Travis, as the mentee on this call. What is your takeaway for those listening about, perhaps they're on the fence about Veterati? What would you say?
First of all, I would say absolutely go for it. I mean, whenever I first, kind of learned of its existence, I was, very excited with it. And I spoke with a couple of mentors here and there, guys like, Chad Storley and those guys like the mega mentors, and then you kind of, you start to really, as I said, as the dust kind of settles, you start to find you're kind of, as Tim put it, your little board of directors that really can mesh with your personality type and your goals and help you get to where you want to be. But also, what the really cool thing about Veterati is that, I talked to, a score of other guys, that we had, 1, 2, 3 calls, stuff like that. And because I would look at their profile and be like, okay, this guy has a skill that I really want to know about. He did, for example, like this guy worked in government work, and then the next thing you know, he's doing financial work. Okay, well, I want to talk to him, figure out how he handled that pretty drastic industry change, and how he spoke to naysayers that would say, oh, well, you have no relevant experience doing this. So, how do you think you can do this? And hearing his answers, his responses, how they worked, so really it almost gives you like a library of guys and women to talk to that have been there, have done it, and can really offer you some really personalized, substantial advice other than just going to, like your university, which, I'm sure that some universities do great career work and they have great career programs, but, you literally get that extra degree of personalization there and really that one-on-one thing. And you can really, there's so much knowledge you can gain for that. And as Shawn said, I really do look forward to changing my profile over to a mentor profile and being a quote-unquote Veterati alumni. I'm really excited to be able to help out the next guys that might be going through the exact same thing that I went through, trying to land a face-to-face interview in a world where you're just referred to the career site, so it'll be a very rewarding experience, to send the elevator back down, so to speak.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much. Folks, you've been listening to Chris McGraw, Travis Long, Shawn Hoadley, and Tim Denman. They are Veterati mentors and mentees, and you can find them by heading over to changeyourpov.com/Veterati. It'll take you straight to the site, and you can search for those guys by name. You can search by industry. You can search by branch of service. You can search by city that you're interested in. There's a whole different ways of slicing and dicing and finding the right person for you. And folks, you can find all of the show notes that we talked about today on this show by heading over to changeyourpov.com/episode 182. Never miss an episode. Hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. We have a lot more great content headed your way. And hey, come be a part of our community over at Change Your POV Squad Facebook group. We'd love to see you there. All right, folks, until next time.